My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sivasagaran, Guru Piran Neo, fellow Jnanis. Today I'm going to still continue Mahan's chapter 24. In the chapter 24, there is two parts. One is the vision of God and dreams. Swamiji has explained quite a number of things on dreams. He's given his own experiences and so on. In the previous satsangs, we covered about vision of God, what God is, God realization is. Today, I'm going to spend some time on dreams. This is something that most people have, and having a good understanding of what their dreams are is very important. So here, what do we mean by dreams? There are two aspects of dreams. So here, Swamiji, here we define dreams as two things, and I'll cover both. Today, I'll cover the first part, and then I'll cover the second aspect. If you look at the Oxford Dictionary says that dreams are a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. Right? So I think all of us have had some form of dreams in our lives, and some of them we try to make sense, some of them we remember, some of them does not make sense at all, and some of them we don't remember. So it is a part of us. It is a phenomenon that happens to every humans. I think it also happens to animals too. But we really need to, if it's happening to humans, then we really need to understand what this is. So we have to take a very, as I said, in the spiritual compass, we have logic and rationality and a scientific way of trying to understand dreams. You see many descriptions of dreams, they try to interpret dreams and so on. Particular dream happens, this is what's going to happen, and so on. So again, you see that the way it is defined is that it's a series of thoughts, images, and sensation that happens in our mind during our sleep. Similarly, a dream is something like a fantasy or nightmare or vision or hallucination that, so if you see similar concepts. But let me come to what do we mean by dreams? As an explorer, as a Mahan, as a, scientist, one really need to understand what this phenomena of dream means. So we really need to define what the dream is, right? So this is what we mean paripurnam, wholesomeness of understanding our own, what's happening in our mind, why is this happening, right? If a thought is there, what is the reason it is here? So I've always taken that approach of trying to understand why these things happen. So obviously, some things that can make sense and some things does not make sense. So I always rely on what the scientific information and the scientific analysis is. This is the best logical way of trying to understand this. The second aspect of dreams is, aspirations, ambitions, goals, and I'll cover that, in the next satsang. But today I want to focus on the first part of really trying to understand what dreams mean. Okay. So I want to understand. So we know the dreams are things that happens in our mind, when we are sleeping. Okay. So what is this? And here is what, some of the literature that I've been looking at, trying to make sense. And this is what many scientists, psychoanalysts, and psychologists, and people like Freud and others have tried to make sense, and I tried to make sense. So here are several reasons why do we dream. So sometimes we dream. So I'm going to walk through with you this reasons, and try to look at some logical. There are many human beings have been dreaming from the third millennium. There've been documented evidence of dreams from the third millennium BC. They try to understand what this dream is all about. So this is a long history of trying to make sense of dreams. So let's see what are the kind of reasonings, logical reasonings of dreams, right? Dreams are often about a place, or a person or particular event that happens, in our mind during sleep. Why do we have dreams? And here are some of the reasoning why we have dreams. It is to fulfill some desires that we have. You have to remember that the dreams are thoughts in our mind, and thoughts are actually electrical pulses that are, passed from one synapse to the other. And, as long as there's firing that is happening in our brain, the intellect will try to make sense, the mind will try to make sense. So when we are going to sleep, normally we have different stages of sleep, right? We are slowly normally we would get into kind of the very shallow kind of sleep phase, different sleep phases until we hit the deep sleep. Deep sleep, everything goes absolutely quiet, right? But there are different stages of sleep that we go through. And in the different stages of sleep, there are random firings that happens in our brain. And the random firings that happens in our brain, as long as there's firings in our brain, the intellect and the mind will try to interpret it. Why do we have the random firings in our brain? It is because we may have a particular desire that we are thinking about, and that desire is there continuously, and and the desires are all generated by electrical pulse and chemical reactions, right? And even though you're sleeping, your mind is quietening down, those electrical pulse and the chemical reactions are still taking place. So it is generating pulse that the mind tries to interpret. So if the desires are really strong, we see that it imprints in our synapses, and we see that even when we are sleeping, the desires come. Maybe we want to fulfill a particular thing, such as want to buy a nice car. You've always been thinking about a car, and suddenly in the dream, the car appears. Or you want to win a lottery, and suddenly you see that you feel as though you won a lottery. So nature has built this in us for a specific reason, right? This brain and the way the brain generates thoughts, nature's built it. And there must be a reason why the dreams are there, right? So one is to fulfill the dream. So in the normal day, you don't, in a normal waking life, you don't fulfill it, and the mind may get disappointed, the mind may get upset. So at least, in your dream state, you fulfill that desire, so the mind feels a little bit more relief. So it's nature's way of kind of protecting the mind from becoming too depressed, right? So this is one theory that says that, as long as we have a lot of desires, sometimes the desires happens to appear in our sleep. The second aspect is actually dreams are there to reinforce a particular thing that is really important. So it's a reinforcing mechanism. So if you're doing something continuously and the neural pathway is reinforcing itself in sleep too, right? So it's a reinforcing mechanism so that you do not forget, right? So sometimes when you're doing things and when you go to sleep, you forget. So nature's built things in our brain such that you do not forget. So the reinforcing mechanism, right? So this is another theory that says that dreams are there to reinforce, to remember things so that, it's part of your memory, right? Another theory says that actually sometimes dreams are there to make you forget. This is what we call reverse learning. So you have to remember that whenever we interact with the world, uh, the interaction is through neural pulse, the pulses that reinforce, reverberate in our mind, right? And it's percolating in our mind continuously. So even in sleep, it's percolating. So sometimes, nature or the subconscious mind generates, dreams that are completely different. It's to get rid of all the useless thoughts that are not relevant. So it crowds out or squeezes out those unnecessary thoughts that still are there in the brain, percolating the brain, So these dreams, rewire the brain differently. One is reinforcing and the other one is rewiring it. So dreams come in to disrupt that signals so that when you wake up, you have a fresh set of signals. You forget about things that are drawing you down, but it kind of, when you wake up, your mind feels a little bit more fresher. So it's very interesting that, different theories try to explain this, right? I've experienced both, where there are things that you're trying to solve a particular problem and you're trying to remember things step by step, and you go to sleep and you find the solutions in that dream, because the mind is relieved and you start putting things together, the brain puts things together, and you find a particular way of solving things. And you wake up, you quickly write it down, otherwise you forget. And then you try the solution, it works. So this is one way that the brain, uh, reconfigures itself to reinforce something, or reconfigures itself to reverse learn or get rid of things that are not relevant. So dream is a very important stage for many people, and this is what some of the learnings of the brain. The other aspect is actually a dream is seen as when you go to sleep. Yes, everything is shutting down. The only thing that is continuously working is the brain, and sometimes the brain itself exercises itself. So it's there's an exercising that is taking place, making sure things are operating, and when those operations take place, that means you're doing the exercises of the brain, it releases signals, neural pulse. And whenever you release neural pulse, you see that, the intellect and the mind tries to analyze it. So we see that, so another reason, some of the experts say that the we dream is because it's the brain's way of trying to exercise. The other aspect is actually your mind is continuously thinking about things. The action has not taken place yet. You're always thinking how to address this. So some people feel that dreams are a way that we rehearse our daily actions. Right? So we're going to do something, the brain rehearses, and you're getting the remnants of those activities, the remnants of those experience before you actually partake. Right? So this is another way of trying to understand that some things happen. You're dreaming something because the mind is starting to rehearse itself. Like before a concert, you're rehearsing. Before an exam, you're rehearsing. Right? So the brain is recalibrated, and the brain continuously do that. That before you sit for an exam, it's kind of rehearsing, or before you have a big presentation, you're rehearsing. This is in the same way before you partake in this material world, the brain, rehearses its actions. The other aspect of the dream is actually it's has got a healing property. Some people feel that, when you're going through challenges in your life, people get visions of the divinity, visions of God, visions of motivation things, inspirational things that comes. And don't worry, everything's okay. Sometimes people dream about gurus, dream about gods because they're thinking about them during difficult periods, during moments of challenges. And sometimes you hear people say, oh, this deity has come in my dream to say everything is okay. This, so you see this, sometimes, you see the case of Ramanujan, the great mathematician. He was trying to solve a particular problem, and he started then writing the formulas. And when they asked him, "How did you do this?" he said, "I've been thinking really hard, and God came and gave me the solutions." Right. So for some people who are going through very difficult moments, they have a lot of faith in a particular deity or guru or God. They see that you have dreams of them. So what you're thinking about in your day-to-day life sometimes manifests. So this is again because you're thinking about it a lot. The neural prints are there. So even though when you're sleeping, the neural prints are still firing away, and you get that experience. The other one is you're trying to solve problems. This is the Ramanujam story that I told. You're trying to solve problems, and even though your body is going to sleep, the brain is still working, trying to find solutions. So in that process, you're dreaming about these solutions. And so again, you see this. I myself have experienced this personally. You're thinking about a particular problem or formula or a theorem, and you can't crack it, and you're thinking and thinking for many, many days, weeks. And one fine day in the dream, the brain tries to sort out and tries to find the solution. And most of the time, you forget the solutions. Most of the time, you don't remember. But once in a while, you see that uh, the dream is so intensive that you remember the dream, and you have to quickly write it down. When you write it down and you think about it later, you see that sometimes, at least in my case, I found through that process were able to solve some of the really complex problems. So the brain tries to uh, be active even in sleep to find solutions that you're thinking about. The other one is we reflect our emotions, right? So our emotions are there, and we see that in dream we've been thinking about it, and that emotions are still there in the brain, still in the form of electrical pulse, still reverberating, and we see that in dream we are reflecting about maybe sadness about a person, a place that we've been to. All those things start showing. And the last one is actually what we call random firings. Random firings is that you've had all the interactions daily, and then you're going to sleep. Many, many interactions, many, many firings. And as the brain is going to sleep, you have what we call remnants of that neural pulse still there. They fire away. And sometimes they fire away. You may have, in a day, you may have 10,000 imprints or 10,000 thoughts. And as you're going to sleep, thought one, a little bit of thought one, thought five, thought seven. So it picks up bits and pieces, and the remnants are there. It tries to reconfigure back. And sometimes those thoughts don't make sense at all. Right? They are useless thoughts because there are so many thoughts to their experience at picking up bits and pieces and trying to put it together. And it really doesn't make sense. So I remember in one case where I used to watch a lot of Star Trek, and so I remember watching this show where Captain Kirk and team visited a green planet, right? And you know, and I was doing other things, day-to-day activities, and in the sleep, suddenly in the dream, I started dreaming about this green. Everywhere I go, there's green. People were green, the mountains were green, everything was green, and very interesting. The characters in that movie, uh, at least the features of them showed up in my dream, and it's mixed to all the other engagements that I was having in the day-to-day activities. So that made me think, hey, how did I get this? Visiting a particular place, you see a lot of greenery, you see a lot of green mountains, things that don't make sense. And then I realized actually I watched this show, and that remnants, and that was a very interesting show. I was so caught up by that Star Trek episode that it's imprinted very deeply in me, and every other thought, remnants of it is being colored by it. And so I thought about it carefully, and I say, oh, that really makes sense, that remnants of thoughts. So it really didn't mean anything. So we see that random firings takes place. So there are many theories that tries to explain these dreams. Some may be valid, some may not be valid. But again, it gives you a kind of an understanding. So I try to think about, yes, there are moments that I had particular desires. It showed up in my dream. Yes, there are things that I was really trying to understand, memorize. It shows up in the dreams. There are times that, I try to do things, but it makes me forget the things that I remember, which is really troubling. After the dreaming and you're waking up, it's just completely clear. You have a different mindset, right? So a little bit of everything uh, has shown up, at least I've experienced. So I can rationalize that maybe some of these theories hold in some of the dreams. Healing. There are moments where you're going through a very difficult period in your life, and you see that, you see wise people, and because you've been reading about them, and you see that, they come and say, "No, don't worry, everything will be okay." So you feel a little bit more relief. There are times that you cannot solve particular problems. You're thinking deeply. You see that the solution comes, or at least you learn to look at the problems in a different way. There are moments that you're reflecting on certain emotions, experiences, it shows up. And there are times that, there are dreams that I had, what does that mean? What is this? The dream doesn't really make sense at all. So there are a variety of dreams that takes place in our mind for a variety of reasons. Right? So in all this, there are things that, okay, I take a little bit more seriously. There are things that, I really cannot make sense. And there are things that I can't remember. So whatever it is, you see that it's happening in our brain. We really need to understand why this is happening. So I just want to give you that. You'll see in Mahan's, he gives narration of all his version of the dreams. But whatever said and done, there are no serious research of trying to, everybody has got their own theory. There's no really evidence of what are the reasons. There are so many reasons, right? As I said, a little bit of all the things that, people have tried to analyze. Yeah, okay, it makes sense in the dream context. As I said earlier, few theories that try to make sense of dreams, it's to process information, how information is processed in our brains. It's about chemical reactions and neural pathway. So remnants of that is remaining while you're sleeping. The brain is shutting down remnants, and that remnants creates this dream. The other one is improving memory, as I said, reinforcing creativity, trying to solve problems. So the brain goes on overdrive to start, finding solutions. Another one is to prepare you. Sometimes you're going through difficult things. The brain has a mechanism inside to prepare you for disappointment, prepare you to take the challenge, and also, confront emotional turbulence. So when all this shows up, you can say, okay, why is it showing up? It's the state of my mind, right? So we see that there are a few things that impact the dreams. One is the health condition. If our body is not healthy, you see, when the mind is supposed to shut down properly, it doesn't shut down properly. So it leaves remnants of that neural signal there, and the brain tries to interpret it. But if your body is healthy, you're exercising, you're meditating, doing all those things, the body, becomes more synchronized, and the sleep phase, you don't go through the shallow sleep phase, you straight go into the deep sleep phase. So you hardly get any dreams, right? So the health of the body is very important. The other one is the food that we eat. Certain food, keeps the brain active. Even when you're sleeping, you can't sleep. There are certain, like for example, if you take nicotine or caffeine, you don't sometimes get deep sleep. So the brain is still firing signals, and sometimes you cannot sleep, right? So the brain is tired, but you cannot sleep because of the nicotine. You see that sometimes you get misfirings and you get all kinds of weird dreams. There are times that people watch horror movie and all the horror shows up in the brain, right? So your daily activities sometimes impact the state of your mind, and that state of the mind, has an impact on what happens in your brain when you are sleeping. If you live a healthy life with meditation and mindfulness, you see that your sleep will be very smooth and deep sleep, that you have very little dreams. I hardly dream. Occasionally when, Guru Mahan's function is close by, or Guru Sankaran's function is close by. You're thinking about them, sometimes they show up in your dreams, right? So again, these are things that you try to make sense, but you don't get caught up by it, right? So this is how I see the dreams. There are some, plausible explanation of why dreams happen. There are sometimes the brain is preparing you for something in your day-to-day activity, so you have to take cue of that, because a lot of things are imprinted in your brain. So many things are happening. There is a subconscious mind that is keeping track of everything. So you may have forgotten it. It's reminding you that, okay, you've got to do this, you've got to prepare for this, you've got to be careful. All those things is nature's way of preparing you, helping you process information, storing things in the memory, helping you solve problems and be creative, protecting you from harm, and also from the turbulence. So the brain is so powerful. The brain is complex, very powerful, and we need to be able to understand why all this is happening and how to harness this, how to harmonize the brain, how to make sure that the brain is healthy so that the brain is able to be efficient and productive, gets the right nutrition, sleep, all those things, that so that you can function very well in your day-to-day activities. If the brain, if the mind is not peaceful, the brain sometimes overworks, and you see that sometimes, the brain gets tired. So the key thing is that everything in balance, and that's what gives you a kind of a balance, Sadosha.